all new. AM1150WTMP.com.
It's Porch Talk Radio on WTMP, 1 o'clock Saturday. And welcome to the show, another episode 133.
And we are live.
And we are live. And so the voice you hear is not one you ever hear. I'm Tim Horton. I'm the executive producer of the Porch Talk Radio show. Our fearless leader, as we call him, Eddie Adams Jr.
Has gone AWOL.
He's he's going to play hooky this weekend. Family funeral, not fun stuff. We touched on a little bit of that last week, and so he won't be here today. We don't believe he might show up at the last minute. He might call in, but I seriously doubt it. So I'm here. Who was it famously who said, I'm in charge? Al Haig, or who was it who said, I'm in charge? The famous Watergate White House. Anyway, never mind. So I'm here.
That's before my time, sir.
Gabriel Phillips is here.
Absolutely.
Willie Lawson is on the way. So we're going to just kind of wing it and do the best we can. We hope you can tolerate the non-PC Porch Talk Radio show today, where
you mean we're allowed to speak our mind?
Where we speak our mind. And
is that legal?
The old white guy is on the radio today with the old Hispanic guy and
excuse me, not old.
Our permanent guest contributor
Aged.
Willie Lawson's on the way. And
we'll say well seasoned.
We'll go forward from there. Hopefully we don't irritate too many folks. So it's Porch Talk Radio for Saturday, this April 13th. Yes, we're going to do this day in history because there's some interesting stuff. We'll get to that in a little bit, just
Not really.
to annoy Willie Lawson. And so we'll get started. Gabriel and I will hold the fence down.
Absolutely.
So let's start with our sponsors, as we always do. We're conservative Republican folks and capitalist at heart, so we like sponsors and paying bills. Well, we don't like paying bills.
No, we like the money.
The fact that we have to pay bills is the way it works. So we want to thank the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee for being part of the Porch Talk Radio show for all these years. When I and Eddie originally had this idea years ago, we talked to the folks at the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee and said, hey, we got this crazy idea and we're going to irritate people. And they went, oh, gee, we like that. We'll support that. So thanks, Dim. Thanks, Clarice and those folks. And Todd Jones has been with us forever.
Wonderful guy,
A lot
good
of
guy.
folks know Todd only because he ran for the elected position of the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser's Office. Did not win, but he is one of the most credentialed private property appraisers.
In other words, he knows what he's doing.
In the state of Florida and around the country, and he
Absolutely.
really knows what he's doing.
Great guy.
And if you have a real heavy commercial property appraisal issue, Todd Jones is your guy. His website address is realadvice.com because that's what you get.
Catchy.
Yeah, like there was a plan to that. He did that on purpose.
Wow.
And our buddy John Despro at Print Fast. You hear Eddie talk about John Despro all the time. Any of your printing needs, and that means political yard signs, business cards, letterheads, banners, road sign stuff, Print Fast, printfast.com. There's Sable Park out there off of 301 in Hillsborough County.
And he has cars.
And he has cars. And we always mention that he has cars. We sometimes neglect to mention the name. It's Good Guys Cars. If you look it on Facebook or on the website, Good Guys Cars, Tampa. He has cars. Willie's bought a car from him. I bought a car from him. I don't know what Gabriel's problem is, but a lot of folks we know have bought cars from him.
I'm not confessing.
And so if you need your printing done, many of you know, a lot of you don't, but many of you know I'm a VC startup guy, so I'm starting companies and rebranding companies and things like that.
VC meaning?
Venture capital.
Got it.
And so we do rebranding and relogoing and mergers and stuff, and so we're always needing new business cards and new logos and new this, that, and the other, and John's great at that. So if you need that, there you go, that's what you need. So who are we going to start with first? Who are we gonna annoy
Well,
first
we
on
talked
this
about the
lovely
traffic.
Saturday?
We talked about the traffic thing. Welcome, Mr. Lawson, he has entered the building.
And Willie Lawson has entered the building.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Are you late because you got a red light camera ticket?
No, no,
We
fortunately,
actually
I'm
have
not.
that point this morning.
I was gonna start with that, so your
That-
timing is good.
We should, no, I did not, fortunately, I did not have to deal with any red light cameras.
That you know of.
No, well, exactly, but you find out 8 weeks later that you made a right turn when the camera said you shouldn't have made a right turn. And then some nameless, faceless person who doesn't work for the city of Tampa or anybody who has any real authority,
In Arizona.
are they in Arizona now?
Yep,
Well, the
yep,
company is in
yep,
Arizona,
yep.
sends you,
ATS.
sends a notice and they send you a ticket for $158 that if you don't pay, they can suspend your license. If you get caught driving without a license, you can lose your freedom and end up in jail. That's probably not the way to run this.
But they do
run
it
the city.
legally. Here's a loophole, before I get into my big rant about red lights. Here's a loophole. They have a sworn TPD officer that reviews all those videos that they take. It's not just a snapshot. Most people get the picture in the mail.
The vid-
But
that's a video clip.
there is a video behind and they pull a still out. But there's a sworn TPD officer, allegedly, theoretically, who reviews all those videos to determine that, yes, in fact, that was a violation. Now, that's all fine and dandy, what a job, you know, no wonder that job's anonymous, I wouldn't wanna be that cop, everybody in town, yeah. But the base point today on Porch Talk Radio is, Tampa, you should call and congratulate the ATS lobbyist because they have successfully gotten the Tampa City Council
How much is that contract? by the
to
way?
renew, they don't wanna talk about it, to renew
Wait a
for-
minute, stop,
for
wait,
5
wait,
years.
wait, Tim, wait, they're spending taxpayer dollars and they don't wanna tell you how much it is?
Oh, no.
You don't have the need to know, sir.
Yeah, I do.
Exactly. Yeah, and they've renewed the contract for 5 years, without the new mayor, whoever, and without the last 3 elected seats, because we have 3 runoffs. By the way, Walter Smith,
So the la-
Stephen Lytle,
so
and
the lame-
Orlando Goose.
So
you
the
didn't hear
lame
me say that.
ducks, so the lame ducks,
So the lame ducks have no say, and the new mayor, whoever, has no say. They shoved it through last week.
that's just
4-3 vote, which means that Walter Smith told me personally he wouldn't have voted for it. Orlando Goose told his next cop, he knows better than to, I haven't talked to Orlando specifically about this, but he's next cop. There's no way he'd have voted for that silliness. And Stephen Lytle wouldn't either. So we went from, 4-3 vote, 5-year renewal of the contract to
5
something
years.
that never would have passed because they slipped it by before the new
called
rule
politics.
installed. Exactly. It's a game, baby.
So if I find out that somebody's getting a kickback of monetary proportions,
We won't see you again.
well, you know what? I actually would feel better about it. Because otherwise, it's just stupid people.
You would hope.
I would hope it'd be graft.
And by the way,
Over
we're
over
not
stupidity.
saying that anybody took any graft.
No.
It would just be better if that was true.
Well,
That's what-
politician?
I would
Because
rather that be the case.
Then they'd have a reason to have voted for this tomfoolery and
Yes, and
silliness.
then we go, okay, now that makes sense. You're getting a little kickback. Okay, well, because otherwise,
We still don't like it, but okay, now we get it.
well, now I understand.
They bought you a pool, they bought you a car.
Because otherwise, this is you got our vacation home in Arizona.
Right.
Otherwise, this is just stupid.
Right.
You're just
Yeah.
dumb.
Well, it's stupid either way. So the short version of the story, not that we can do anything about this, but the short version of the story about red light cameras is, and this is long settled research and science, by the way. Red
What?
light cameras
Science?
do not solve the problem of red light runners in Tampa. And before I get into this, Willie has. Have you ever gotten a ticket, red light ticket?
Oh, yeah.
I've never gotten one.
I've paid
So
my
I'm
fee.
a rant and I'm bad about that,
I've
and
gotten
I've never
two.
gotten a red light camera
gotten
ticket.
two.
Okay. So
He's notorious.
here's the deal.
Fair enough.
They don't solve the problem. Everybody listening knows the intersection. I'm gonna go through this real quick. Everybody in Tampa listening knows the intersection. I'll pick on Dale Mabry at Waters.
Mhm.
Okay. North and southbound, you have 7 lanes of traffic. When you include the turn lanes and stuff, north and southbound, there's 7 lanes of traffic If you are crossing at Waters and the light is orange as hell, I mean, you know, you're cutting it close, you're running the yellow, you're doing it intentionally, the light is really orange, but not red, you think, when you enter that intersection,
When you enter.
you go below and through, you ran a red light, you deserve a ticket. If there's a cop on a motorcycle sitting there seeing you do it, he'll write you a ticket and you deserve one. Come on, you ran a red light. The problem with red light cameras is not that. The problem is that the results of those accidents now have changed. The insurance companies hate red light cameras because what happens is the accident in the intersection incident goes down, but the rear ender instance goes through the roof because the guy up front slams on the brakes because he doesn't want to go into an intersection, yellow, and he's not the one that gets plowed from behind, by the way. It's car number 2 in that chain that gets plowed by car number 3, right? It's guy number 3, guy number 4 in the string that are scooting forward trying to slip through. They don't see the first guy jam on. Okay, so the red light rear ender goes through the roof. And then the real problem is the people who cause death and tragedy in those intersections are criminally negligent. I pick on Dale Mabry on Waters on purpose because everybody knows that intersection. So let's assume you're on Dale Mabry going north or south and the light's red and people are going across in front of you. And the light turns yellow and then red and everybody stops. Your light turns green, there's a 5-second delay, and you pull forward. Think this through with me. You take your foot off the brake if you're first in line. You take your foot off the brake, you put your foot on the gas, and you roll forward into the intersection. We're talking 6 and 8 seconds. Research has shown this. If somebody comes across Waters Avenue at enough speed and that late, it's criminal negligent homicide. It's vehicular homicide. And it's not, oops, I accidentally was in the yellow when I ran a red light and got it. No, it's criminally negligent homicide. They need to go to prison for that. And no law about red light cameras and a $168 ticket is going to solve the real problem, which is you had someone who criminally negligently killed you or massively injured you because they had to be going at enough speed to cause the death and be so late as to hit you.
But, and those are the people who are either distracted by this thing or that thing, or just can't, or just don't know how to drive.
Don't care.
Don't care.
Or drunk.
Tampa's
Or drunk.
Tampa is legendarily rude drivers, but we all know that.
Well, because they all come from somewhere else.
Oh, look out.
What? They all come from somewhere else.
The problem is they bring their voting habits here.
Too
That's
many
a separate issue
too many
there.
tags from Michigan. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, they used to drive.
Way too many tags from Michigan around here. New York.
We are not being anti-Michigan.
New Jersey.
New York and New
Well,
Jersey.
they're in Jersey, but not the other one.
Yeah, all of them. Every single one of them. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think the science and research says that yes, you may slow down the number of accidents that occur in the intersection, but the ones that occur actually on the roadways, the rear end crashes, always go up because you're right. The third person can't see that the person in front has slammed on their brakes, and then it takes a while for the second person to react, and by the time that actually gets to the third person, that's when you have
Yeah, the research scientists call that accordion effect.
Yeah, well,
And that's what it is. It's always the third guy, the
That
fourth
delay of
guy.
reaction, boom.
So when anybody wants to say that this is science, you know, and this is gonna save lives and stuff, well, no.
No.
This is exactly what you thought it was. So money grab.
Right.
And how I'm sure it's a money grab is that if they won't tell me how much that contract is for, if I can find out how much Antonio Brown is going to make as a wide receiver, as a private citizen wide receiver from the Oakland Raiders, another private organization, if they'll publish that, and my own city government won't tell me how much they're paying for red light cameras, we got a huge problem.
Well, the way the contract is structured.
Don't tell anybody?
Besides, don't tell anybody. And there are provisions for non-disclosure, by the way. but they, it's a commission sort of deal. In other words, they take a flat fee and they give the city their piece. And by the way, the city of Tampa's piece is, and the state of Florida's piece is bigger than what ATS gets. It's not like they make all the money. They're just a service provider. But their incentive is to write more tickets, not less tickets.
Well, if you're getting paid on commission,
Right.
heck yeah.
Yeah, you're paying
And-
on commission, you wanna sell more cars, sell more houses, sell more business
Whatever.
cards, sell more
Sell
whatever
more.
it is you're
More
selling.
cameras.
So the idea is if I'm worried about the video that gets to the sworn TPD officer. What do they get to see? Do they get to see all of it?
There is a, most people don't realize how this works. Essentially there is a constant video stream in that intersection. That's not technically true, but go with me here. There's a constant stream of video,
Okay.
and so when you trip the switch, it backs up and catches 15 seconds of video, so they actually have the scene. The problem
Do they have any?
is they don't have the
in
context.
surrounding? That's my thing.
Yeah, they don't have the context.
So when I get a ticket on going north on Nebraska, turning on the Hillsborough Avenue, which is a scary intersection to start with.
Exactly.
That is a frightening thing. You just hold on to your nuggets and hit the gas.
Punch it. Cut the AC off.
So that's the idea. But the idea is that what they don't see is anything coming east and west on Hillsborough, especially from the vantage point of the driver making a right-hand turn.
Well, they have a view of the entire intersection, but you're correct. Their view is bird's eye from up on those poles where those cameras are, and the flashlights. If it's a late in the day, rush hour evening, you see the lights blinking. That's what that is. Those are the cameras taking the still shot that you get
Yeah.
in the mail. They have to blink your license plate, which is reflective, so they can read your tag. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this rant on Porch Talk Radio and you decide that your genius solution is to block and cover your license tag, that's a bigger fine and fee if they catch you doing that. Just sharing that little tidbit of information. You know,
don't
before
do that.
somebody gets to be a genius. Hey, I heard the guys on Porch Talk Radio talking about this, and the solution is cover my tag. No, don't do that.
I've seen ads for such on the internet.
Yeah, and they are, you know.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah, Porch Talk Radio, making your life wonderful, solving all the world's problems one at a time. But
One at a time?
blocking your tag to be seen by
Don't
the
do that.
cameras, don't do that.
Don't do that. Although it seems like something like you want to do. After you get a couple of those tickets in the mail, yeah, you kind of want to do that. And you get a ticket in the mail, and then you get your SunPass bill for several $1,000s because they haven't billed you in 6 years because their system sucks too. And we don't know how much they're paying for that piece of crap, apparently.
Well, they're slowly working that one, changing the subject, but they're slowly working that one through where they're going to waive all the, it's not set yet,
They should.
but they're gonna waive all the past tolls, legitimate or not. Just waive all the past tolls, make that contractor eat it,
And then it start fresh?
and then start fresh. It's not set and done, but that's what they're arguing in Tallahassee about doing
Only
that.
common
I think
sense-
that's the
The
simple,
only
easy
common
solution.
sense thing to do.
Except for the lobbyist for that contractor doesn't wanna do that, because that's huge money.
Well, you know,
Huge.
there's a way to fix that. Don't suck at your job. Just don't suck at your job.
Well, that's unfortunately the solution to a lot of problems that nobody wants to go to first.
Absolutely.
Just don't suck and you won't have to worry about it.
Just don't suck at
Just
your
don't suck
job.
at your job and you won't have to worry about that.
Like the old Google thing, just don't be evil, you know?
Yeah, just don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't be a
Be
criminal.
nice. Be nice.
All right, so it's 20 after the hour. Porch Talk Radio on WTMP, AM 1150 and FM 97.5. We're not going to give out the call number today because Eddie's not here to talk to you, and nobody wants to talk to me. I'm Tim Horton, the executive producer of Porch Talk Radio, the voice you never hear, which is why you're confused. Gabriel Phillips is here.
He's
Our-
confused.
And he's
Hola.
always confused.
Hola.
Hola.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
Not that we're racist around here. The white guy on the microphone with the Hispanic guy and the brother in the corner. Willie Lawson is here. He's our permanent guest host.
Permanent guest
We
host.
should probably
He's our eye
upgrade you
candy.
from permanent guest host to full-time guest host, but we can't afford that $15 an hour and benefits. So I'm sorry, you're a 1099 contractor dealer.
I guess I have to work for David Strauss, but anyway.
Oh, well, come on now.
I won't get into all of that unless we have to, but
I don't think we have to.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
Moving
but,
along.
but the election is coming up.
when is the
and,
election, by the way? Is it soon?
It's sometime coming up.
Because
Because nobody knows when it is.
well, because you know,
It's right now.
But starting,
19th, right?
starting Monday, you can go early vote for Walter Smith, Stephen Lytle, and Orlando Gouge. You didn't hear me say that out loud.
well, you know, except that you did. You know,
I don't know what you're talking about.
my mail guy, my postal guy is like, he's like bent over because there's like 82 pounds of flyers that he's stuffing into my mailbox, flipping every day.
And knowing you're eating all of them.
Not reading any of them, as a matter of fact.
Well, in general terms, and without calling anybody out because it's everybody's problem.
God forbid.
My opinion for what it's worth. The Tampa mayor's race is just awful. Awful from day one, awful today.
Oh, really?
And
Get
no
off the
matter
fence,
who's
Tim.
elected,
Get off the damn fence.
it's awful.
Tell us what you feel.
Because none of the candidates, and there are ones I like and of the original bunch and ones I didn't, and we'll not go there, but none of the candidates effectively talked to any of the voters to convince them to go vote for me.
But they have money.
Our election turnout was embarrassingly bad.
20.22%.
It's awful. It's awful. But the reason nobody, in quotes, goes to vote is because they're not motivated to go vote. Donald Trump won the election, whether you like it or not, because he motivated people, go vote for me. Or vote for me because you hate Hillary.
By the way.
Hillary Clinton got record numbers of votes
In California, New York.
because she said, vote for me, I'm gonna do all these things, and by the way, Donald Trump's crazy, don't, vote for me. They engaged voters and got people up off the
That
couch
is exactly how Barack Obama got one.
to go vote, and
True.
Obama did it, and
That's
it's.
exactly how
it's-
Barack Obama did it.
It's
Because
a well-worn path. I used to teach this, and we don't talk about this a lot, but I used to teach this stuff at the RNC in DC. You can't win an election by saying, that guy over there is terrible, or that woman, whatever, that person over there is terrible, vote for me. You have to convince a majority of the voters that you're the greatest thing since, Pop-Tarts, sliced bread, and, I don't
Red
know.
light cameras.
Red.
I like Pop-Tarts,
Red light
actually.
cameras. To get people to vote, and none of the candidates for mayor in this cycle, my opinion, engaged enough people and did enough of the right stuff.
But they have
for
money.
anybody to care.
But it's-
Well,
but
but
it's
they
sort of-
spent it all on consultants who are
It's
50%
called a tax write-off. It
genius
wasn't their money,
to
almost
get
so.
the job done and accomplished correctly.
But I think you're right. I think it more seems like this inside baseball thing that's going on. That's sort of leaving a lot of the people who are on the outside, people who aren't the chronics at the community meetings, who aren't the people who are in their neighborhood associations.
Right.
Those are kind of the chronics that are involved. It sort of left everybody else out because those are the only people who ever see any of these people, who ever interface with them at all, and they seem the most passionate. But they are only about 20% of the population. They're not really. One candidate's representative has come to my door, and I think I've got a ring video of her. But all she was doing was handing me a flyer, the same thing that she could have put in the mailbox. I think they were just saving a few bucks on postage, frankly.
Yeah.
But the candidates themselves have not engaged the voters in any real way.
Right.
To motivate people to come out.
And if you're running for president, TV commercials are an effective way because neither Hillary nor Donald Trump are going to walk through my neighborhood knocking on doors.
I know your neighborhood, no way.
I get that. But for the mayor candidate races, that's a tool, a campaigning operational tool that is very effective.
Sam Gibbons.
and just nobody did it. And people want to throw rocks at David Straz for not attending the quote-unquote candidate forums. He
But you-
did some of them,
But you
he
still
didn't
have
do a
the
lot.
same group of chronics I just talked
But it's
about.
the same group of, right, they are a complete waste of time. Those of you listening to Porch Talk Radio, and Eddie Adams is missing this week because of a family funeral, so we're stumbling along. We invoked the name of Eddie, so I wanted to tell you what's going on.
But we're doing it in Jesus' name.
That's right. I'm Tim Horton, the executive producer.
Cover all the
for
bases
Porch
now.
Talk Radio, sitting here filling in for Eddie. Gabriel Phillips is here, and Willie Lawson's here, and we're talking about the campaign for the city council. David Straz didn't attend a bunch of the candidate forums, and he got a lot of heat for it. But even when Eddie was running for Congress, and many of you know that he ran several times, going to those candidate forums is generally a waste of time. Optically, it's a bad move because people say the things that they say if you don't attend. But it's the same 60, 70 people who show up at every one of them.
Yep.
And there are no voters of any substance that show up for those things. And so they are, in fact, a waste of time.
You say preaching to the choir?
You know,
Or you're preaching to somebody else's choir. So
Ah.
and even if you were able to change everybody's mind into place, that's 60 or 70 people.
right.
So,
And who cares?
well, yeah, because that's, it's such a small percentage. I mean, the optics of not showing up is like the guy who doesn't show up at the party. If he's not there, we talk about him.
Absolutely.
If we had a party and Tim didn't show up, is he here? Let's talk bad about
Let's
him.
talk.
It's tradition.
Let's talk smack.
Let's talk back about
It must happen.
Yeah, and I think that's probably how most of these things go, as opposed to really getting a message out to, was it Sam Gibbons? No, it was Lawton Childs. I'm sorry.
Walking Lawton Childs.
I saw Lawton Childs as a youngster walking the streets of Progress Village,
Right.
and I thought,
Sam Gibbons did it. And by the way, I happen to know this by accident. Oh, actually not an accident, but I'm gonna call it
Keep
that.
going.
Walter Smith, Stephen Lytle, and Orlando Goons, all three are in fact doing varying amounts of this walking around. Chronically elected folks get away from it real quick because quite frankly, it's a pain in the you-know-what.
Well, of
It
course
is
it is.
Well, if they
hard.
can pay people to
It's
do it for 'em, why not?
fun, and, you know,
It's-
it just sucks up a huge amount of time.
I was out there
So
just now,
first-time
it's 100
candidates
degrees.
generally do a bunch of it.
Yeah,
But the further away that they get,
Absolutely.
the less and less likely it is to happen.
Very
the
much
more
so.
you have name recognition, I guess
Right.
that kicks in.
Well, it makes an excuse. It makes an excuse not to do it.
Yeah, but the idea is that if you're still walking neighborhoods, if you're still knocking on doors, even if you're walking with a crew, if you come to the door and if one of your crew comes to my door and says, oh, by the way, the candidate is right there talking to your neighbor, that's an impact
Big time.
that, you know what, a flyer in my mailbox, I don't care how dark and how the photographs are laid out.
Well, and
Yeah.
now with the ring cameras, like you said, you know the candidate who showed up at your doorstep.
Yeah.
Now, you know, we assume all she wanted to do is hand you a flyer, and that's true. But you know she showed up on your doorstep.
I do know.
And if, you know, if Hillary or Donald Trump had shown up on my doorstep after I picked myself up off my living room floor and propped my chin up
Sure.
so my jaw was closed again, I would say, hey, how are you?
Yeah, actually, I had Ben Carson back in the beginning. He did a few houses,
Ben
but he was out
Carson,
there.
Ben Carson did some. Yeah, Marco did
He
a
actually
lot of
chased
it
a car to get
in-
his luggage back,
in
too.
his early days. Yeah, it's a well, what the problem with walking, and the reason multiple elected officials get away from it quickly is that if you knock on people's door in person and say, hi, please vote for me, the people who answer the door have this really annoying habit of saying, hey, by the way, what do you think about this issue?
Right.
Or I'm mad about that
Yes.
issue, or
Well,
you
sure.
need to fix this thing or that
And I
thing.
believe it should happen that
And
way.
then you have to stand there and explain to them, especially if you're running for re-election. If you're running for the first time, you can say, yeah, I'll fix
Whatever.
that to everybody. Right.
But
But if you're running for
Why did you
re-election,
take care of this first time?
you say, well, why didn't you get this taken care of?
Sucked the first time.
Well, there's a solution for that.
don't suck at your job.
Oh my goodness. That
You know,
truth thing again.
Well, you know what? You know, and I know that it may be uncomfortable for when someone running for re-election, but I don't care. I don't care if you're uncomfortable. The most uncomfortable person should be the incumbent. Because that's the person with the history.
Right.
That's the person who should be the most uncomfortable in any election is the incumbent, because they've got a history, and I can go back to them and say, hey, listen, you know what? Here's the deal. You should have done. You said when you were running, well, you were at my door last time. You said we were going to work on this, this, and this. And now there is a pothole at the end of my street that I think a family of seahorses is living in. It's 45 feet deep. It was only 3 feet deep when you came to my door last time. Right. So tell me what the deal is.
Well, and that
and I think that's okay. That's how our system should work.
Accountability.
And that then begins to morph into, you know, the sloppy, lazy, easy solution to is you know, set term limits. Let's get rid of all these old chronic elected officials, except you can't do that. There are some technical problems, especially in D.C. with set term limits.
Oh, D.C.
But let's
Tampa,
just stop voting for chronic, old, senile, crazy people in D.C.
Oh, like Maxine Waters.
Like Maxine Waters.
Wait a minute.
That's my
Nancy
favorite story, and we are going to get to that story.
That's not PC now, sir.
No, let's jump. Well, now, in fairness, I mean, you know, Sam Gibbons down here, local, was one Democrat from Florida, but over in Pinellas County, let's be fair, you know, Bill Young,
same deal.
Been there 100 years.
The last 2 years of his term, he did some really amazing stuff for the vets and the folks at MacDill Air Force Base. I'm not throwing shade.
How long was he there?
But he was there 937 years.
Yeah.
Sam Gibbons was, you know, in D.C. for 42 years. If you think that Robert Kennedy, Robert Byrd, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi have any knowledge of what's going on at the corner of, we were talking about the red lights at Dale Mabry and Waters, if they have any knowledge of what's going on
in their own neighborhood,
back home, you are crazy. They live in D.C. full time, they swim in that swamp, and they have lost touch. The problem is the voters have to fix this problem, because you can't, for a variety of reasons, legislatively mandate, well, you can only be a congressman for 10 years or 12 years.
And of course, it is the fox guarding the hen house there, so that doesn't help.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, so the idea is that you think that the parties won't replace them with someone just like them.
Correct.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like somehow, everyone's going to get replaced and everyone's going to be different. Like, they all had their Paul on the way to Damascus, you know, moment, and they all went blind, and they woke up and saw the error of their ways suddenly.
I see the light.
That's not what's going to happen. The parties will get smart, and will replace them with someone just like them.
Well, there is a real interesting situation that I'm following. It's going to be curious, because it has nothing to do with anybody Republican. But AOC has become
the 29-year-old bartender,
this big cause celeb in D.C.
Oh, yeah.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
She was evicted twice.
She got elected on this wave of, let's get rid of our regular person, let's get somebody new blood. And she's gone to D.C. and gotten Kardashian Twitter famous, because all this stuff, whether you agree with her politics or not, she's gotten famous by
constantly making up facts,
spouting all this stuff. Well, there is, back in her home congressional district, a wave of folks, all Democrats now, I'm not Republican hating here, but local wave of Democrats back in her home district that are a little none too happy with her, because she's interested in her fame and her interest and her issues in the Green New Deal and all this stuff.
And she pushed
not taking care of the voters in her
Amazon.
district.
Amazon got pushed out, and she was behind it somehow.
Well, and the Amazon.
That didn't help.
Yeah, that didn't help.
That was huge.
Well, yeah, and that's always the balance, and that's always the danger of being agenda-driven and not being voter-driven and being people-driven. So you're right. There are people in that area who are saying, yeah, she's famous, but we ain't seen her.
And what's she doing for me?
And she's not talking about our issues.
Right.
We've got a similar issue where we live, you know, here in Congressional District 14. We see our congresswoman, being very famous and being very touted where she is, but we don't really see her around here that much.
Well, and unless you go to a Democratic Party fundraiser, we literally don't see her. She doesn't go to candidate forums and
No,
You know.
no candidate forums. She was missing at a new teacher event in East Tampa,
unless it's a publicity event for
well, she
something
was
that she's involved in.
While she was at the TV station that morning, but she couldn't find a way to make it to East Tampa to bring in and recognize the new teachers coming to East Tampa. And I heard an audible groan from those who were attending, because her person in town who's been sort of taking care of her and taking care of us with her, had to make an excuse for her again. I won't. You know, everybody knows who that is. I love and Congressman Castor's person for East Tampa is someone that I just adore. So I'm not throwing her under the bus at all. I mean, Chloe has been awesome to me, and I just adore her and her work with CDC. But she had to make an excuse for her again, and there was people in the room groaning.
Well, and the problem I have, aside from the politics, and obviously the conservative Republican white guy sitting here guest hosting for Eddie Adams today on Porch Talk Radio.
You guys similar, except he's black and you're white.
But unrelated to that is you can do that community engagement if you choose. Our friend Dennis Ross, who just opted out and is decided not to rerun, did his 2 terms and came back home. He did an incredible amount of,
yes, he did,
when he had weekends and weeks off from D.C., visibility in the community. Bill Arrakis does it. Not nearly as much as his dad used to, but he does a bunch of it. Vern Buchanan, not so much. Charlie Crist, not so much. But, so if you choose to do it, you can. And as much of it as you do is reflective of how important you think the voters back in the district really are versus, it's DC disease. And trust me, Eddie and I used to talk about this all the time. Those of you who listen to Porch Talk Radio on a regular basis think you know Eddie Adams Jr. because you hear him on this show for 10 years now. Here real quick, we're going to be 10 years. This is show 133.
Good Lord of mercy.
On WTMP.
I've yet to be paid.
But those, and I told you, we're going to keep you on that $10.99 because we can't afford the $15 an hour minimum wage. But we've been doing a version of Porch Talk Radio for creeping up on 10 years. Radio, TV,
creeping whatever.
But it's, he is the person that you hear on the show. He is who you think he is. If you meet him, he's exactly what you think he would be from the way you talk to him here. He's one of those rare individuals who, when you meet them, you want to like them because they are a likable person.
And you're right, Eddie is authentic. What you hear on the radio is
the real deal.
Is Eddie all the time.
Right. And so, politicians who can turn it on and turn it off aren't that way every day because they don't live it, as Eddie does, are the ones that generally go to D.C., get a case of the D.C. disease. They think they're impotent because they're elected and they're everybody in D.C. The problem with D.C., well, there's so many problems with
I
D.C.
wonder how long AOC will be up there, how many terms?
But the problem with D.C. is that the only people you talk to on a regular basis
other DCers
are the people who want to tell you how smart you are, how neat you are, how great you are, how wonderful you are, and there's no conflict in, well, that's a dumb idea. Well, let's propose legislation that makes, the world everything needs to be left-handed starting tomorrow. Well, that's just dumb. But in D.C., 6 left-handed people talk to your congressperson and they tell them how smart they are and they see them once a week and they, some version of lobby them all the time, and all of a sudden they don't know because they didn't talk to Gabriel Phillips, they didn't talk to Willie Lawson back home in the district. They say, oh, well, everybody says this is a great idea. And that is one of many of the problems with D.C. is that feedback loop.
And
Yeah,
boom.
yeah. We call it the echo chamber that they live in. They keep hearing the same thing again and again, and then eventually you think that everybody thinks this way, and then you get this idea. And when you talk to some of these folks, when you get them out of that thing, they look at you and they talk to you as if
They're shocked. They're surprised.
Don't you get it?
What do you mean? You don't think this is great?
This is obvious. It's obvious that we should switch over to being left-handed. It's obvious.
Well, it's like we should have more roundabouts over there in
Where I
the
live?
neighborhood. Yeah, we need more roundabouts out there.
Yeah, we need a roundabout right in the middle of North Palmetto Lane. North Palmetto Lane is literally 10 houses. We need a roundabout right in the middle.
We need more of those over there for sure. That seems to be the area for that.
So that's all, where I live, that's the only, how a lot of streets go through. Where I live, it's not a dead end on either end, but it's the only Palmetto Lane there is. It's the only street there is right there. That's it. We need a roundabout right in the middle of it.
Absolutely. And I'm sure.
And with a fountain.
Oh, yeah.
The big,
Well,
like that big fountain they had in Clearwater. Remember that big fountain they had to get rid of because it was too distracting. You couldn't see what the heck was going on.
and people were plowing into it, and then they'd have to replace it.
I love it.
Exactly.
I love government.
Exactly.
Well, we need to
This
get
moment in
a
time?
whole lot more red light camera tickets to pay for that roundabout at Willie
Exactly.
Lawson's house
That's exactly right.
with the fountain.
With the fountain. I want the fountain. I want the whole nine. I want the bushes and the fountain.
We got the stupid choo-choo tax passed, so now you'll get a crosswalk in your roundabout, so you can walk to your fountain
That's
with
great.
blinky lights.
And in the middle of the fountain, there'll be a park because you know what? We need to make our neighborhoods more walkable.
Oh, jeez, that choo-choo tax. We're going to skip the choo-choo tax today.
Are you
because
sure?
We can do 2 hours on how dumb that is.
Well,
but earlier today, I've got to tell you, props where it's due. Tamara Schamberger was on the radio here at TMP earlier today, if you didn't hear the show. And all of us here are real political, obviously. And we talked to some of these folks. And I have got to give credit to School Board Chairman Tamara Schamberger and Sally Harris, who worked on a lot of this, and Jeff Akins and whatnot. The usage of the money passed for the tax passed for the school district for infrastructure improvements is going amazingly well. And if you're curious,
And I am.
we get into these things where, they raise the taxes, where the hell do money go, what do they spend it on? You can go to the Hillsborough County School District website, and they have, in advance of the tax passing, the list of all the crap they were going to spend the money on. And now they have a report of what they're spending the money on, working on the list, and they're about as transparent as you can get. It would be nice if the City Council of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and whatnot would do that too. Where's all that red light camera money going? But credit where it's due. They're doing it as close to right as elected officials are going to get, and so that's kind of neat.
That's the ADHC.k12.fl.us, I believe it
Right.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, because they use the standard correct.
It's dumb. They should just call it hillsboroschools.org and then just send that to.
That's why Surgeon Brin invented Google. Just type in Hillsborough County School Board website and Google will fix it for you. And if you don't like
Surge.
Google, do Bing or Yahoo. I mean, it's not that hard.
DuckDuckGo.
So you're
Or
listening to
DuckDuckGo.
Porch Talk Radio on Saturday afternoon. Eddie Adams is playing hooky today, family funeral. And so prayers all around there. We talked about part of that last week. Gabriel Phillips is here. Willie Lawson
Thank you.
is here.
Thank you very much.
I'm Tim Horton, the voice you almost never hear, the executive producer for Porch Talk Radio. And so now it is time for
Please.
Willie Lawson's
Oh, my God.
most loved feature of
But Eddie's not here.
the Porch Talk Radio.
This is the worst thing ever about it.
This is not the worst
It's the
thing.
worst.
Eddie's not here.
This
He
is
won't know.
This is fun. So
He
this,
never listens to the show. He
This
doesn't.
day in history,
Please.
some guy named James Cash Penney opened his first store on this day in history. And now J.C. Penney's is closing everything.
Yeah, they're going bankrupt.
Because Amazon's killing them. On this day in history, there's some interesting stuff here. I was going to let it go, but there's interesting stuff. Today is the day in history that General
Interesting.
Sherman...
Interesting, such a
was sitting in a camp in North Georgia and said, hey, y'all round up your stuff because I think we should do a march and let's go and torch the hell out of Atlanta. So Sherman's march through the South started on this day in history. Franklin Roosevelt dedicated the Jefferson Memorial, which is my favorite memorial in D.C.
Is it real?
I like it. Yeah, it really is. When I used to spend time up there, I did photography. And the Jefferson Memorial is very cool this time of the year with the cherry blossoms, and in the winter with the snow and the rain and the, because it's lit and weird. And so it's just very photographically very interesting.
Okay.
Lincoln is cool too, but
Lincoln's my favorite.
and then this day in history, Roosevelt died, and Harry Truman became president. The first navigational satellite was launched into Earth's orbit in 1960 on this day in history. Sidney Poitier got an Oscar on this day in history, 1964, for what? Movie you'll never remember. You remember?
Banana. The Banana Boat.
Lilies of the Field.
I've seen Lilies of the Field,
Wow.
and it's an awesome movie.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take your word for it because I
It
have
is.
no clue.
It is great. Sidney Poitier actually does. He's a handyman for this group of nuns in this, in this little bitty convent, and it is awesome.
Well, then I'll have to go see it because
It's a
I
great
couldn't
movie.
remember that. I couldn't place it.
It's a great
Today
movie.
is the day in history. Houston, we have a problem. Apollo 13, the story we know about, happened on this day in history. 1976, today, now this is notable history here. This is the most important one of all.
Notable.
Because I'm kidding. 1976 is the day that the U.S. Treasury started issuing the bicentennial $2 bills, which I still have tucked away, stored someplace, because everybody went out and got one to keep as a memento.
I don't have one.
I don't know.
I was 16 and I didn't care.
Nobody
If I was
spent this $2 bills, but everybody in the day.
If I had $2 at 16 years old, I was spending that money.
Oh, big time.
Jonas Salk
$2.
offended Mrs. Wahlberger on this day in history because he invented the polio vaccine. And now we all know that, of course, all vaccines are awful and terrible, according to, Playboy model and minor TV celebrity Jenny McCarthy, because we get all of our medical advice from geniuses like her. So 1955, Jonas Salk offended.
That's what we do. That's how we roll.
Tomorrow in history is the day that Noah Webster invented that book.
The dictionary?
The dictionary.
Did he invent the dictionary?
And tomorrow in history is the first day that the Pony Express showed up in San Francisco. The first loop delivering mail.
And things were never the same. Delivering mail?
We've been getting flyers. Vote
Delivering
for
mail?
me ever since.
In San Francisco?
Ever since.
They were delivering mails in San Francisco?
And other than that, Mrs. Lincoln,
not surprising.
How did you like the play occurred on tomorrow's day in history, along with that iceberg that took down the Titanic happened tomorrow.
Oh, it was what an eventful weekend it must have been.
So this was a really hot jumping weekend in history on Porch Talk Radio.
Wow, it's always one of my favorites.
You made it.
They're delivering mail.
I brought you different this day in history, although I
delivering
I
mails.
invented it, but I got lucky with the this day in history
This was
stuff
the season for it
that
all.
happened today to keep your interest versus some of the obscure,
Just bizarre.
literally bizarre stuff Eddie comes up with.
Absolutely bizarre. No, but if you haven't seen, if you guys want to do something this weekend, if you want to stay home and watch a movie, Lilies of the Field is a great movie.
Where would that be? Would that be on a?
You
would
may
that
be
be
able-
on one of the platforms.
You may be able to find it on Hulu, or you may be able to find it on Netflix. You may be.
You
able
could
to find
probably DVD it. I read. I saw in my weirdness stream of media this week that there is still a huge, substantial portion of Netflix users who actually get DVD Blu-rays in the mail, old school
Wow.
mail, because stuff like Lilies of the Field.
You can. Yeah, I'm sure.
They don't stream it,
I'm
but
sure you
they
can
will
order.
still.
I'm sure you can order from them.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's where.
Look forward to.
But then you'd have to go to, God, where would you go buy a DVD? I guess Walmart sells them.
No, it's still.
Where would you buy
$20.
DVD player. $20.
$20. They're
For a
down.
Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, the whole thing. They just want to get rid
You
of.
can take, you need to take your kid's PS4 and put it in there,
There you go.
which is actually one of the best. It's not a tech show, but this is actually the PS4 was one of the best Blu-ray players out there. They were better than all the other ones. So a lot of people who were viewing DVDs at the time and Blu-ray actually bought those game systems to do just that.
And the screens were better too.
Well, I mean,
Totally.
but it was just the machine, the Blu-rays, the Blu-ray machine on the PS4 was better.
The timing for the Blu-ray was really, really unfortunate because it came, excuse us, while we Porch Talk Radio
Geek out a second.
geek out into the ditch on, tech nerd stuff because we sit around the table here. We're all nerds. But Blu-ray was unfortunately arriving just as all the streaming stuff was. And so it really didn't, quote unquote, catch on. And people didn't realize how much better it was than standard DVD stuff. And because you could stream it online and you're watching your movies on a 11-inch tablet, how much quality viewing are you going to get done on a 14-inch laptop?
Yeah, but I get to do it. But I get to do that wherever I want to, and that was the deal.
True.
Convenience has always been the thing that moves. Eight tracks sounded better than cassettes, but 8 tracks were huge, and they made a lot of noise when they changed channels. And cassettes were small, and I could store it in I could put it in my shirt pocket or whatever. So that's just how it is.
It was hard to have a Walkman with the 8-track. Although somebody had one, they'd sell you if you'd buy it.
I think,
But the Walkman was the cassette.
I think Magnavox made a big one.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Is
they
that
did.
right?
Yeah, it was one of those big boombox things.
I'm old. I'm so freaking old.
Oh, I remember telling my son that to hook up the CD player above the DVD player. He said, "No, Dad, we don't need to do that." I said, "No, I used to work at an electronics store. I know that you have." No, Dad.
You can put the CDs in
One
the same
one
place.
works. Show me, and he did. I was like, "Oh wow, my 14-year-old son just showed Dad something." Like, oops,
Yeah.
I fell off the technology train somewhere along the
Yeah,
way. there.
yeah, you really did.
I had no
Or I
idea.
think maybe you were thrown off head first.
Something. Not
Yeah.
sure. But
So-
evident.
So listen, and when you and I talked about this earlier in the week, a lot of people are showing up in Congress here lately. A lot of witnesses showing up in Congress. We saw Candace Owens slap down, and if I could say this, biatch slap Senator Lou in a way that was freaking epic.
I have the
It was
3 or 4 minute video here. We were going to play before you walked in on us.
Absolutely amazing.
Gabriel has the audio clip. You want to play it?
Just a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Just a little
Let
bit?
me go ahead and find it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and get that?
And the
that up.
look on the committee folks' face
It's just priceless.
when they come out of their mouth with this stuff, like we were talking about earlier. Where did this come from? What do you mean you don't agree that we're the most genius people in the room? You're actually challenging us, and who are you, and how come I've never heard of this alternate opinion before? So
Yeah, that's and
it
that,
just shocks them.
it is it just blows them away.
If you've got it, go ahead.
Let's just hit it there.
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
What I need to say is that they're manipulating statistics. The goal here is to scare blacks, Hispanics, gays, and Muslims into helping them censor dissenting opinions, ultimately into helping them regain control of our country's narrative, which they feel that they lost. They feel that President Donald Trump should not have beat Hillary. If they actually were concerned about white nationalism, they would be holding hearings on Antifa, a far-left, violent white gang who determined one day in Philadelphia in August that I, a black woman, was not fit to sit in a restaurant. They chased me out. They yelled race traitor to a group of black and Hispanic police officers who formed a line to protect me from their ongoing assaults. They threw water at me. They threw eggs at me. And the leftist media remained silent on it. They were serious. What they won't tell you about the statistics and the rise of white nationalism is that they've simply changed the data set points by widening the definition of hate crimes and upping the number of reporting agencies that are able to report on them. What I mean to say is that they're manipulating statistics.
And that's the key point.
The goal here is to scare blacks, Hispanics, gays, and Muslims
that's
into
where I wanted
helping them censor dissenting opinions, ultimately into helping them.
That's the key point of her clip. There is very few people know this, but this rise of hate crimes, that everybody on the liberal left wants to talk about is manufactured.
Well, it's election season. They got to do some scare tactics. It's election season.
But
it's all spin. But
it's just in general,
the data gathering of the incidents of racial incidents, the database that all the media uses, the reporters use, the database that lists all these offenses, crimes, valid or not. I'm not arguing that racism isn't valid, but the database list of this happened today, this happened yesterday, this happened the day before, started when Trump was elected. So there's no historical history of a database list of these crimes during any of the Obama administration, any of the Bush administration, any of the Clinton administration, any of the Abraham Lincoln administration. There is this database that everybody keeps referring to, and the rise of these unsettling crimes started with the Trump administration. So, it's disingenuous to say it's increasing. I can't really, quite frankly, imagine it's increasing. It's always been chronically unfair and nasty.
And awful and terrible.
And going on.
Yeah.
So it didn't start with Donald Trump, number one. But number two, how can you say it's increasing when you don't have any statistics back to the red light camera instance at Dale Mabry and Waters Avenue? 20 years ago, before red cameras existed, you can't say, oh, well, the increase in people running red lights at Dale Mabry and Waters has gone up 972%, because you don't know how many people ran a red light, allegedly, in 1984.
Because you cannot have empirical evidence of something that didn't happen. So it's incredible, and that's one of the things that I would hope that, and we're running out of time here. And one of the things that I would hope that Black folks would be very, very conscious of where you get this information and the things that you spout and the things you take on and the things you get emotional about. Be very careful of where it came from and how it was gathered.
And as Eddie says here all the time on Porch Talk Radio, we're here. We are more than happy to tell you that we're conservative Republicans. One of our major sponsors is the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee. We're transparent about that. We're giving you a different perspective, a different view on the same news stories that you hear talked about all day long on WTMP.
But go look it up.
We're more than happy for you to go look it up, back it up, and double check all the stuff we tell you, as long as you'll do the same thing for the stuff that's said on the other shows too. Just a different spin, different perspective.
Well, sure. I mean, because I think that's really the key.
Information,
guys.
knowledge.
Well, the thing is wisdom. It's taking that knowledge and knowing what to do with it, and being adult in the fact of when you get this information, what you can't do is that you just can't let your emotions spark up, and have that be the thing that drives you.
Right.
You got a biblical thing you're calling on there, because the word says don't trust your emotions. Now, if it was written back then,
We've
always changed.
We've already known that people are, emotional driven, and we have to make sure.
Well, and that's all the social media is for anyway. Is driving, the
narrative of the moment.
The emotional drama of, I'm so offended because Willie said something online, or
right.
Gabriel's Facebook post offended me, or something Tim said on the radio filling in for Eddie, or blah blah blah.
You're
blah.
grown. You're going to be offended, and you know what? And I agree with what Van Jones said at the Chicago Institute when he was on a panel with S.E. Cupp. Is that I want you to be offended every day, but I want you to be able to speak back. Right. And be strong. I don't want you to be safe.
And be knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
Go vote. The election for the
19th,
Tampa mayor and the city council runoffs are coming up. You can go and do the early voting locations library on Monday. Walter Smith would like your vote. Stephen Lytle would like your vote. Orlando Goose would like your vote. You didn't hear me say that out loud.
Good people. All good people.
Decide who and what you think you want as a mayor. We talked about that too. This is Porch Talk Radio on WTMP. Tim Horton, executive producer of the show, filling in for Eddie Adams, who played hooky today. Family funeral, prayers all around for that. Gabriel Phillips is here. You've heard Willie Lawson today. And this has been show, what did I say, 133.
And we're still here.
on Porch Talk Radio.
Surprised you
We're
didn't
still
we?
here, whether you like it or not.
Shocked the crap out of you, didn't it?
And if
Thank you, folks.
and if today offended you, well, tune in next week and
We'll
let
try it again.
Eddie give
God
it another
bless
try.
America. Go.
Thanks, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Peace.
Thank you, guys.